We'd been planning the trip for months. A digital detox, a few nights under the stars, just me and Marisol, away from city buzz and endless screens. Pinewood forest sounded perfect. Old growth trees, silence thick enough to hear your breath, and trails that disappeared into untouched wild. A forgotten patch of earth where no one had Wi-Fi, and every map just showed green. That first night, we set up camp near a clearing. The fire crackled as we sat side by side on logs, huddled in jackets, while the flames licked the cold from our bones. Marisol tossed in a pine cone and laughed as it popped in the heat. I told her a story I'd read as a kid, something about a trickster spirit that stole socks from tents and left pine needles in their place. She grinned and rolled her eyes, but her smile warmed the dark. Then I saw her. Beyond the edge of the firelight, where shadows swallowed the trees, something moved. Pale, thin, and fleeting. Just for a second. A girl. White dress, standing still as stone at the tree line. I blinked. She was gone. A chill rippled through me like cold fingers brushing the back of my neck. "Did you see that?" I whispered. Marisol's smile faded. She glanced over her shoulder, scanning the dark. "There," I said, pointing, "by the trees." But the forest just swayed, slow and quiet, and the only sound was the fire hissing as another log collapsed into embers. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. Every time I shut my eyes, I heard footsteps crunching leaves, not near the ground, but above me, in the branches. A girl crying, over and over. "Stay with us." I woke in a cold sweat. The tent was still. Marisol breathed soft beside me. I unzipped the flap and poked my head out. The fire had died down to embers, but there was something else. A pattern in the dew. Tiny footprints circled our tent. Too small to be adult. Too many to be from just one child. I didn't tell Marisol. In the morning, the forest looked normal. Peaceful, even. Birds chirped like nothing had happened. We boiled coffee over the coals and packed up. I tried to laugh off what I'd seen. Just shadows and tired eyes, I told myself. But as we headed deeper into the woods, leaving the clearing behind, I had the creeping sense that something had shifted. The silence wasn't peace anymore. It was watching. The trees didn't just sway. They whispered. And every few minutes, I'd glance over my shoulder just to be sure the little girl wasn't following. Because I swear, she was real. We left the clearing behind just after sunrise. The forest was quiet, too quiet. No buzzing insects, no rustling in the underbrush. Just the steady crunch of our boots on dry needles and the occasional chirp of birds that sounded more like warnings than songs. Marisol walked ahead of me, humming softly under her breath, the same tune she'd hummed by the fire. I tried to match her pace, but something tugged at me to slow down. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us, maybe more than one. Then we saw it. A narrow trail branched off to the left between two massive pines. It hadn't been there before. I swear it hadn't. The dirt was damp and dark, as if freshly disturbed. No footprints, just the faint impression of something dragged through the mud. "Did we come this way yesterday?" I asked. Marisol shook her head. But it's marked," she said, pointing at a strip of faded red cloth knotted around a branch. "Maybe someone left it." "Or something," I mumbled, but followed her onto the trail anyway. It was colder on this path. The air hung heavier. The birds quieted. About 20 feet in, I saw it, a doll lying face up in the mud. Its porcelain skin was stained with moss and mud, a thin crack splitting one cheek. Its eyes were open. One was missing. I crouched and picked it up. It was heavier than it should have been. The moment I touched it, the wind stopped. Everything stopped. A strange hush fell over the forest like a held breath. Then came the whispering. At first I thought it was wind snaking through the branches, but it was voices. Children's voices. Words I couldn't quite catch. Marisol turned slowly, her face drained of color. "You hear that too?" she whispered. I nodded. "Please, help," the voices said, clearer now, more desperate, like someone crying into a pillow. I dropped the doll. The trees shifted around us. I felt something pass by, invisible, brushing my sleeve like the hem of a dress. We didn't speak. We just moved forward. The path twisted tightly until it opened into another clearing. This one was wrong. The trees formed a perfect circle around a sunken patch of land, where roots pushed up like skeletal fingers. In the middle, an old wooden swing hung from a crooked tree, its rope worn and frayed. It creaked gently, swaying on air that wasn't there. Marisol reached out, took my hand. Her palm was clammy. Then, something tapped. Not loud, just a faint sound, like a fingernail against glass. But there was no glass, no windows. The noise came from the far side of the clearing, behind the trees. I turned toward it, and saw him. A gaunt little boy, maybe 8, stood half hidden behind a tree. His eyes were wide and sunken, skin pale as the sky above. He raised a hand, not to wave, but to beckon. His mouth moved, slow and deliberate. Come play. No voice, no sound. Just that hollow motion. I backed up, bumping into Marisol. Then the doll fell from my pack. I hadn't even realized I'd kept it. It hit the ground and cracked open. Its porcelain eyes spilled out and rolled toward the boy. He didn't flinch. Marisol grabbed my arm and yanked me back. I didn't argue. As we turned to leave the clearing, I saw them. Photographs, pinned to the bark of a gnarled tree. Dozens of them. All children. Muddy, tear-streaked, terrified. Their faces frozen mid-scream. The boy from the trees was among them. My legs went cold. That's when the ground trembled. Not like an earthquake, but like something shifting beneath us. Buried things. Breathing things. And from the tree, the photos began to sob. We didn't run. Not yet. We stood frozen in the clearing, the swing still swaying gently behind us, the trees pressing in with their breathless silence. My eyes kept drifting back to the boy. He was gone now, vanished between the trees like mist, leaving only those damned photographs on the gnarled trunk. Marisol stepped toward them. "Kev," she said, voice barely more than air. These are real. These are children." The photos were black and white, water-stained, curled at the corners like they'd been here for decades. Some were stuck with nails. Others had rotting strings looped through holes in the corners and tied to the bark like ornaments. Each one showed a child, not smiling, not posing. Crying. Mouths mid-scream. Some were muddy, others scraped and bruised. One boy had blood smeared across his forehead, and all of them looked directly at the camera, wide-eyed with something worse than fear. And there, right there, the boy who had mouthed, "Come play." "I don't like this," I said, backing up. "This isn't some old family photo album. This is wrong." Marisol reached out to touch one. I grabbed her wrist. "Don't," I said. "Don't touch them." She nodded, but her eyes were locked on the tree. "Kev, they're moving." "What?" "Their mouths," she whispered. "Look." And I did. I stared. And as impossible as it sounds, I swear on everything. The children in the photographs moved. Tiny shifts, like breathing. One girl's chin quivered. Another blinked. A boy's mouth twitched open, slowly, achingly, as if trying to scream again. The whispers came back, louder now, wrapping around us like threads. They weren't random anymore. They were names. Names chanted again and again, as if the forest was taking roll call. One of them, I swear, was mine. I stumbled backward, heart slamming in my chest. The doll I had dropped earlier was by my foot. Its face, cracked and empty, lay split on the ground. And then, I watched it happen. The last of its painted porcelain eyes rolled out on its own and came to a stop, staring straight at me. The photographs rustled, not from wind, from movement, and then they started to sob. The sound was muffled, like crying through cloth, a wet, choking sound, full of despair. The photos began to twitch. Hands pressed forward behind the glossy paper, as if the children were trapped just beneath the surface. One by one, the faces contorted, not frozen anymore, but alive. Eyes bleeding, mouths open, some screaming silently, others gnawing at the edges like they were trying to chew their way out. "We have to go," I choked. Marisol didn't argue. She turned and screamed. The swing was still, but beneath it the dirt was shifting. Small, pale fingers were pushing through the soil, reaching. Dozens of them. A child's hand gripped the rope of the swing and pulled. Not up, down. We ran. Branches clawed at our faces. The path wasn't where we left it. The trees had moved. Everything felt backward, sideways, like the forest was folding in on itself. Behind us, the sobbing turned into howling. And the photographs on the tree, the last thing I saw before we broke the clearing, were burning. No fire, just curling and blackening from within, like they were rotting from the eyes out. The boy's photo cracked straight down the middle, and before it crumbled, his mouth smiled. Just once. Wide. We didn't stop running until the whispers faded again. But even then, in the stillness, we could hear the swing creaking behind us. One last time. We didn't stop running. Not even when our lungs begged us to. The forest ahead twisted in ways I didn't remember. Paths where there were none. Familiar trees suddenly foreign. It was like the woods were rearranging themselves with every breath. We stumbled through thick underbrush until the screaming faded behind us. I dared a glance back. Nothing but tall, silent trees. No boy, no photos, no swing. We slowed, panting, trying to regain bearings. The sun barely filtered through the branches now, everything cloaked in a muddy amber glow. I pulled out my phone again. Still no signal. The compass app spun in slow, mocking circles. "We need to find a way out," I said. "We need to go back," Marisol whispered. "Back to the clearing. Maybe we missed something." "No," I snapped, more harshly than I meant to. "We're not going near that thing again." She looked like she might argue, but then she froze. Her hand shot out, grabbing my arm. "Kevin!" She pointed up. High in the trees, perched like birds, were children. Dozens, silent, still, watching. Their eyes followed us, unblinking. I stepped in front of Marisol, heart thudding, and then they were gone. No sound, no movement, just vanished. The woods returned to their hushed, hollow calm. Marisol bent down, needing to breathe. That's when she saw it, half buried in the moss, a small, weathered shoe, too small for any adult, mud-crusted, the sole peeling away. She lifted it slowly, her hand trembling. I spotted the second one a few feet away. And then, the sobbing started again. It was closer this time, softer, not the howling we heard earlier. These were whimpers, like a child hiding under a bed, begging not to be found. Marisol dropped the shoe. "They're all around us," she said. "I can feel them." And I could too. Every tree now felt like it had eyes. Every gust of wind whispered just behind our ears. We spun at every sound. Then I saw it, the swing. Again. We had looped back, but this time, it was different. 2 muddy handprints had been pressed into the wooden seat. Fresh, wet, as though a child had just been sitting there moments before. But the air was still, heavy. I felt like the forest was playing a game with us. "Look," Marisol said, pointing at the ground. More small footprints. Not 1 or 2. Dozens. Leading in circles, spiraling inward toward the swing. And at the center of it all, a drag mark. Something had been pulled away. I was about to speak when I caught a movement in the corner of my eye. High in the branches again. One child. Just one this time. A little girl in a tattered white dress, her head tilted slightly, hair hanging like wet string. She wasn't watching us. She was watching something else. And then she lifted a single, trembling hand and pointed. Not at us, but behind us. We turned, but no one was there. We ran. Again. I didn't care which direction anymore. The forest had us. We were chasing nothing but panic and blind hope. And still, behind us, the swing creaked. Once, twice, and then it stopped. We didn't know how long we'd been running anymore. Daylight came and went behind a thick canopy that refused to let the sun in. The forest no longer followed the rules of time. It looped and pulsed like something alive, something waiting. We stumbled into a break in the trees. A cabin stood crookedly ahead of us, leaning slightly to one side like it had been forgotten for 100 years. Its windows were fogged and crusted with dirt, the door hanging ajar. Marisol hesitated, but I was already moving. "We can't stay out here," I muttered. Just for a minute." Inside, it smelled of rot and mildew, but it was dry, and the floor didn't collapse beneath our feet. That was enough. I pushed a wooden dresser in front of the door and bolted the window with what was left of an old curtain rod. Dust hung thick in the air. The walls were covered with drawings, childlike scrawls in crayon and chalk, stick figures with hollow eyes, houses with no doors, trees with faces, and children, dozens of children, all standing in rows, their mouths tiny red ovals of terror. One drawing had been done with something darker than crayon. It was labeled in scratchy block letters, "Stay forever." "Kev," Marisol whispered. "Look at this." She pointed to a small table in the corner, where an ancient tape recorder sat. One of those boxy kinds with chunky buttons and a cracked speaker grill. Something about it made my stomach twist. I pressed play. At first, static. Then, a voice. Faint. A child's voice. Breathy. "Kevin." I stepped back like I'd been slapped. "Kevin, come play with us. We miss you." I hit stop. The recorder clicked and ejected the tape. I didn't want to look, but I turned it over anyway. Scrawled in marker on the label were the words, "Welcome home." "Let's go," I said. But just then, we heard it. Footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, circling the cabin. The floor creaked beneath our feet, but the boards didn't echo the steps we heard. Something was out there. We backed toward the center of the room. I grabbed a rusted fire poker from the cold fireplace. The footsteps stopped at the front door. Silence. And then, tap. A single knock. Not from the door, from the window. Marisol turned, her face drained of color. A small hand was pressed against the glass, not punching, not trying to get in, just resting there. The palm was pale, fingers thin, nails black with dirt. The hand stayed for several seconds, unmoving, then slowly slid downward, leaving a streak on the fogged glass. We didn't move, didn't breathe. Then, more footsteps, dozens of them, scratching along the porch, little feet running back and forth, laughter rising and falling like waves, not playful, not joyous, mocking. "Let us in." The voices came all at once now, just outside. "Come outside, Kevin. We remember you. We never left." The front doorknob began to rattle, then twist, then stop. Dead silence again. Marisol backed toward the wall. "This isn't random," she whispered. "They know us. They know you." I didn't have time to respond, because a voice hissed inches from my ear. "We made this for you." I spun. No one there. But on the floor where the tape recorder had been, now sat a drawing. A stick figure of me. Next to it, one of Marisol, both crossed out in red. Underneath, "Stay forever." The cabin groaned, and then the lights flickered, even though there was no power. Outside, a child's giggle rose into a shriek. The doorknob began to turn again, and this time, it didn't stop. We didn't wait to see if the door would open. I shoved the dresser aside, and we fled the cabin without looking back. The air outside hit like ice. The forest had changed again. The trees were thicker now, their trunks warped and gnarled like they had aged a century overnight. The sky was gone, only branches above us, tangled like black veins. We tried to follow the trail, but it was gone. Every path twisted and spat us back where we started. No matter which way we turned, we found ourselves standing once again before that same clearing. that same swing, swaying slowly. "I don't understand," Marisol said, tears catching in her throat. "We've walked for hours. This can't be happening." But it was. Everything was different now. The forest didn't bother hiding its malice anymore. The swing creaked louder with each return, the ropes more frayed, the seat darker, soaked in something I didn't dare name. And then we noticed the trees. Dolls, dozens of them, hanging from the branches, their limbs dangled by threads of rotting twine, heads tilted at unnatural angles, and all of them missing eyes. Some had mouths sewn shut with red thread. Others had tiny clothes that looked hand-stitched, stained, faded, familiar. One of the dolls wore a jacket that looked just like mine. Marisol stepped forward and gasped, "Kevin, look!" She pointed to one higher up. Its face had been scraped smooth, no features, but its hair, short and curly, like hers. The doll's chest was marked with a blackened tag. M. That's when the crying began again. Not soft, not distant. Wails, screams, the sound of children in agony. Dozens, maybe more. It echoed from every direction. We turned in circles, trying to find a way out, when Marisol suddenly froze. I followed her gaze. On the trunk of the largest tree, nailed between two others, was a new photograph. Not aged, not weathered, fresh. It was her, Marisol. In the picture, she looked terrified, face smeared with dirt, eyes wide with horror. Her mouth was mid-scream, the same way I'd seen the children in the earlier photos. She stepped back, tripping over a root, hand over her mouth. More photos were appearing, pinned by invisible hands. One by one, Kevin, Marisol. Then another photo of me, but this time, not screaming, smiling. I didn't remember that smile. The forest floor beneath us cracked, loud, deep. The sound of wood splitting open, roots tearing away like something rising from beneath. Marisol screamed. A tree behind her split down the center, revealing a hollow. Inside were tiny beds, toys, shoes. The walls were marked with clawed names, children's names, and the whispering changed, no longer pleading, commanding. "Come down, join us. You were always ours." The ground trembled again and split. We fell. Not far, maybe 10 feet, into cold soil and darkness. I landed hard, pain jolting through my ribs. Marisol cried out beside me. Above, the trees sealed themselves like a closing wound. The forest was gone, and we were underground. A soft, pale glow illuminated the cavern. Lining the walls were shelves of toys, all broken. Ragged, stuffed animals missing limbs. Rusted trucks. Torn dolls with faces chewed away. And against the far wall, tiny beds, all neatly made. The walls were lined with drawings again, but not on paper. Scratched into the stone, dozens of hand-scrawled stick figures, some with X's over their eyes, some holding hands, some buried beneath trees. Marisol clung to my arm. "We have to find a way out," a voice interrupted her. Low, raspy, childlike, but wrong. "Playtime." And then the sound of shuffling feet, dozens of them, coming closer. We landed hard. My knees scraped against something jagged. Not stone, not roots, but toys. Hundreds of them. A carpet of rusted trucks, cracked dolls, wooden trains with missing wheels. The cavern around us pulsed with cold, sour air. The ceiling was low, the walls curved inward, almost like a throat. Then the lights came on. Not real lights. A dim glow, flickering like candlelight, spread across the space, revealing rows of tiny beds against the walls. All made, all empty. Names etched into the bed frames. Initials and dates. Some too faded to read. Some disturbingly fresh. Marisol stood slowly beside me, her eyes wide with horror. "Where are we?" she whispered. A child's giggle echoed through the space, then a second, and then dozens, bouncing off the walls in every direction. From the ceiling something stirred. I looked up. Children. Dozens of them. Crawling upside down like spiders, their hands and feet scuttling along the stone. Eyes hollow, skin gray and translucent. Some were missing fingers. Others had mouths stitched shut. They whispered to one another in tones just barely human. He's here. She broke the rule. Time to play. I grabbed Marisol's hand, but a wall slid up between us, fast, like a trap closing. It wasn't stone. It was made of wood. Wooden doors stacked and nailed together, each with a brass knob, some with names scratched in them. "Marisol!" I shouted, pounding the wall. From the other side, her voice came faint. "Kevin! I can't see you! Where are you?" Then the voices turned playful again. "New game. Hide and seek. You hide. We find." A door in front of me creaked open. There was only one way forward. I stepped into a hallway carved of roots and bone. Every few feet, an opening led into tiny rooms, twisted parodies of children's bedrooms, beds made from moss, books written in gibberish, drawings pinned to the walls, all of them of the swing, and in every corner, movement, watching, waiting. I kept walking. Somewhere ahead, Marisol screamed. I ran toward the sound. The hallway opened into a chamber, wider, colder. In the center stood the rotting swing. Its ropes reached not to the ceiling, but vanished upward into darkness. Sitting on the swing was the girl in white. She wasn't glowing now. Her skin was pale and sickly, her face blank. But her eyes were too real. She looked at me and cried. One slow tear rolled down her cheek. "Why didn't you stay?" she whispered. Behind me, the children began to pour in, silent, crawling, limping. Dozens, maybe more. They circled the room like shadows closing in. Marisol's scream cut through the chaos. I found her near the far wall, curled beside one of the tiny beds, unconscious. Her lips moved, soundless, like she was whispering a secret in her sleep. I dropped to my knees beside her. The girl in white stepped closer, reaching out. "Stay with us, Kevin," she said. "You're already part of the game." I looked around. There was no way out. The children had closed every path, their heads tilted in unison, their mouths opened. A lullaby began. Broken. Off-key. "Sleep, little stranger. Sleep and obey." I shook Marisol, desperate. "Wake up, please. We have to go." Her eyes fluttered open. She looked up at me, and for a moment I thought she was back. Then she whispered, "It's okay. We live here now." I stared, and behind me, the trees above the chamber whispered again, just like they did that first night by the fire. "Welcome home."